started doing stand-up comedy while I was homeless. I was my grandmother's translator my whole life. I did not know how to say syphilis in Spanish.
It's funny because the first time I learned about you was I saw you on Facebook Live for a brief second, and I believe I can't remember if it was before Hurricane Maria or after Hurricane Maria, but it was somewhat of you saying or paraphrasing. I'm gonna try to paraphrase of you saying how oftentimes like Latinos we tend to disconnect from the African diaspora.
Mm-hmm. We do.
Facts.
So actually it's interesting because right now this conversation is bubbling because of what's happening in Cuba.
Yep.
Right? And so the unfortunate thing for most people that you see on social media, first we got to break down like social media. Mm-hmm. Only less than 10% of the population is on social media, and that's global. So we really listen to these people and we think these are experts, we think this is the majority of people, and it is not. Mm-hmm. Putting that into perspective, a lot of people have things to say about places like Cuba and Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic. Mm-hmm. The Caribbean mainly has a very different reality because it has a lot of African roots.
Absolutely.
And you don't hear about the African roots in other parts of Latin America as much because you hear more about the indigenous roots, but Black people are global. I think that when it comes to the Latino, Latinx, Latine, whatever floats your boat, I think it's important to understand that we don't have conversations that have nuance anymore.
No,
right?
It's either black or white.
It's either black or white. So when we're talking about places like Puerto Rico and Cuba and the Dominican Republic, there are a lot of realities that we have a hard time engaging because they negate what we've been told for so long, right? Mm-hmm. The propaganda is so big when it comes to the United States, and people who are immigrants have the mentality of, oh, they let us come here. So we have to start from that. So when you talk about like Cuba, mm-hmm. two things can be true at the same time. Mm-hmm. The United States has done some stuff that's really messed up, that's really impacting the reality of Cuba and mm-hmm. has been for a long time. Mm-hmm. And there's a tyrannical dictatorship that's happening in Cuba, and the people are suffering at the hands of both.
Absolutely.
And that doesn't mean that there's no colorism in Cuba, mm-hmm. but I cannot stand on a line of cheering for the oppression of people of Cuba mm-hmm. or putting it all on the United States because it absolves the Cuban government of their tyranny.
Absolutely.
And a lot of times when we come to America, we're very we have this very arrogant attitude that what's good enough for us is not good enough for others. Like mm-hmm. that's enough for them. Like mm-hmm. and so when you hear people saying Cuba should just, they're fine with what's happening to them, they are not fine. I know people who are in Cuba, I talk to them, I'm sending stuff to Cuba tomorrow. Mm-hmm. They have no resources, they don't have medicine, and they do not like not being able to say what they want to say. Mm-hmm. They don't have a democracy. Mm-hmm. So when people talk about socialism from an economic standpoint and neglect the factors that are involved in the governmental aspect of it, which mm-hmm. is why these people are struggling because mm-hmm. they're not allowed to say things, it becomes very complicated. So going back to your question, there's a lot of animus towards Cuban people because they have a big population of white Cubans in America who have supported Donald Trump and practiced anti-Black attitudes towards Black people, including the Black people from Cuba. And so people latch on to, they're like, oh, you know what, that's what y'all get. Or, because y'all voted for Trump. And it just becomes so complicated. And that happens with Puerto Rico with the hurricane. Absolutely. It happens with the Dominican Republic. Mm-hmm. And the truth is that anti-Blackness, it's every time I say it, I cringe because I know people are going to get mad at me. But anti-Blackness is global, absolutely. Not just in Latin America. Mm-hmm. And Black people in America practice anti-Blackness towards Black people themselves, right? So the issue is, instead of targeting other groups who practice anti-Blackness, why not get to the root of it which is white supremacy and this colonialism and colonization that we continue to deal with in the day. Sorry, long-winded answer, but I'm so tired.
I'm so tired. I feel like I'm on the same path as that, like that mindset. I feel so bad for the people of Cuba.
Same.
And people are just like, I remember when I went to Cuba in 2016, and people were like, you need to be careful because the people there are not like America. And then I had my Cuban friends who've been here, you know, who had to come here the hard way. And they were like, let me tell you something about my country. They're like, my country is the safest country that you'll ever walk in.
That's right.
They're like, we don't have rape culture there. We don't have guns on the streets by force. You know, we don't have this freedom that you guys have to do these heinous crimes that you do and get away with for so long. We don't have that. Like, they nip that shit in the bud immediately. And so when I went there and I'm talking to these two young men, just getting to know our surroundings, and they're teaching me and one of my good friends how to navigate around Havana. We asked them, like, you guys have your master's in engineering and you're only 24. Like, you don't want to come to America with that? And you speak English because their mom is an English teacher. They're like, absolutely not. They're like, we don't like how things are run here, but we will never go to a place where you literally are hated for how you look. Everybody here at least look like us. And it made so much sense. It changed the trajectory of their suffering, so they must want to leave. They're like, we're suffering, but we don't want to leave. We want to change it. And so I always took that mindset when it came to white supremacists or white nationalists who are always like, if you don't like it in this country, you can leave. Why am I going to leave? Why don't you just change it?
Yeah.
Why would I leave a country that my ancestors have built? Oh, your ancestors didn't build this because when it comes to slavery, the South really didn't make that much money off of it. And I'm like, so y'all stood in this for 400 years because you didn't make that much money off of it?
Yeah, that's a lie. That's a just outright outrageous lie. The other thing is, it's appalling to people who are the descendants of immigrants to tell other people that if you don't like it here, you leave. Why don't you leave? This is not your country.
Where are you from?
Yeah, you know, the Paiute tribe, the Cherokee tribe, the Blackfoot tribe, all of them, they want you to leave. They say you go home. You on their shit. This is their land.
Right.
Like, right? You know, it's amazing to me how these people come here and have these attitudes towards people of color who did build this country, you know. And there's so much people who have wealth that it was established by that. So they can miss me with all of that. And the other thing is to tell people that if you don't like it here, leave. You guys are always complaining about how you don't like it here. Why don't you leave? Y'all did it at the Capitol. Y'all did it in Charlottesville. Y'all been doing it forever. Why don't you leave if you don't like it here? You know, that's why don't you leave?
Because the white fragility is it's so real, but it's so overlooked by their own. So they're like, no, we could complain. Like, we deserve to be here. Y'all don't. It's like, we didn't ask to be here. Like, you drag my ancestors out here. Like, just pillage, rape, rob, colonize. Like, y'all did that. We didn't do this.
Yeah, it's exhausting. You know, this has been my conversation for the last 3 to 4 years. And, you know, I've decided to refocus on solution and working through programs. You know, just the conversations can be exhausting because then somebody goes and reads a book, now they're an expert, and they're focused on semantics and terminology, and then policy doesn't change.
I don't want to keep having this conversation around Black people or Hispanic people or people of color because they're not our audience.
Yeah.
Our audience is non-Hispanic, non-Black, so non-people of color. So that's who we're pointing our issues to and our conversation to. Then I feel like at the same time it's also their job to dismantle the pyramid or the hierarchy of white supremacy. It's not our job to.
I mean, honestly, it's going to take everybody.
It's going to take everybody.
It's going to take everybody. All hands have to be on deck. True allyship is not a Black Lives Matter sign on your window. It's not a rainbow sign on your window. It's you putting yourself in the position where you use your privilege to create equity for others. And other than that, I'm not here about trying to hear terminology, and because all of that is just scapegoating. Yeah, it's like, you know, I don't want to hear all of that. What I want to hear is, you know what? I'm gonna step out the way and create an opportunity for somebody else, because that for me is what it really is about.
Absolutely. So I know when I watched your Netflix special, you talked about gay men standing in the gap.
I had some heat because of that.
Really?
Yeah, you know, it was minimal because of Flame got all of the people who were upset about the gay and trans stuff. I got a lot of flack from Latinos, Latinx people, but that was I was raised by a gay man, and the funny thing is that somebody said that joke was homophobic. They wrote about it in Forbes. They did an article in Forbes. They were praising everybody else, and they said me and Flame were homophobic. And, you know, my the way I feel about that, honestly, is like, they can go to hell. Like, fuck them, right? The people who said that about me, because the truth is that men have privilege that women don't have. And whether they're gay or straight, they still have male privilege. And if they're white, they have white male privilege. So if you want me to stand in the gap for you and your choices or your lifestyle or who you are, if that is innately who you are, whatever it is and how you identify, because you have to worry so much about terminology because everybody is like watching every word so that they can do something about it. But if you want me to stand for that, then I need you to stand and use your male privilege for me. For
my life.
Because women are femicide, like, all over the world. The governor in Puerto Rico had to call for a state of emergency. It's happening in Turkey. It's happening. It's a global affair, global issue in the Dominican Republic here, you know. And so I just found it interesting that someone took issue with me saying, and the way that comedians express their points is through jokes. And so somebody was really appalled by that. I was saying the other day that I was going to find out who that person was because I was going to call them out publicly. Because I think that a lot of times people get away with stuff because they hide under the banner, especially white people. They'll hide under the banner of whatever group they belong to, whether they're gay or women. But they teeter between oppression and victimhood. And when it's convenient, they're victims. But when they have the opportunity to take advantage of their privilege at the expense of other marginalized people, they do that. So yeah, that I believe that. I believe that if you are a gay man, the gay men in my life have always protected me. They've always been the most chivalrous and generous. You know, I have a friend named Panama and a friend named Jesse who I never lift my own bags. They open my doors. Like and I've never asked them to do it. It's just naturally who they are as people. And they've always looked out for me, and I always look out for them. But they always make sure I get home safe, and I make sure they get home safe. You know, like, I don't understand where there's an issue with that, but somebody did take issue with it.
Somebody will always find an issue in something that you're saying, even when it is the truth. I just remember I shared it on my Instagram story one day, and I was really focused on showing men that, and me and my sister and my fiance were just talking about it, how women, we purposely have to be nice to men, like, to not get killed. Yeah. That's just the bare minimal. Yep. And my sister is like telling me stories about like people blowing her phone up, and the minute she like put them on block, they were calling her from their coworker's phone and sending paragraphs. And so I was telling her, and I'm like, you see, like, can you tell Calvin, like, we try to be nice to people just so we don't die. And
that's a really sad reality. I was in New York. I was on Uptown. I went to go, the lady my tia who does blow dries my hair, I go there. I was going to the train, and this guy was like, hey, come sit on my, and I was like, I'm good. Like, and then he went ballistic, cussed me out. And this couple was like, can we walk you to make sure you get on the train, okay? They felt like they were, and they were like Norwegian or Dutch, whatever. Forgive me. But whatever they were just like, we just don't feel comfortable letting you, because that was pretty volatile.
Absolutely.
And you know, like you multiply that by all the times, I can't, I don't look at some of my DMs, because if I look at a DM and someone sees that I saw it and I didn't respond, what you ain't all that. Like it's not something that we are making up.
No, we don't make it up at all. I was like, this is when I used to be a pharmacy technician in Camden. And from
New Jersey, right?
Yep, Camden, New Jersey. And so on my way from Camden, I finished my shift. I'm on the River Line. We have this thing that kind of goes through, it's like a light rail. It goes through several counties to take people where they have to go. But since Camden is a main hub to go to Philadelphia and Trenton is a main hub to go to DC or New York, it takes you there. So I'm on the one from Camden to Edgewater Park, and I get on the train, and nobody is on my cabin. Like, nobody's there. And 3 other gentlemen get on. And guess who they want to sit next to? I'm by myself, but they want to sit right here.
Of
like,
course.
Our thighs were touching. And one of the guys, he had his hand in a cast, and the other 2 were sitting in front of me, turned around facing me. So I'm like, oh my gosh. And the guy's like trying to talk to me, and I'm ignoring him. And he's like, oh, you can't fucking speak. And I'm like, hi. Like, so now I gotta speak just to see if you back off of me. And I'm like, hey, can you get off? And because now I'm being mad. Like, can you move? And he's like, oh, now I'm not moving nowhere. Where am I gonna go? What you gonna do? Nobody else is on this cabin. And the other 2 guys, they're snickering, they're laughing. And he's like, you just gonna miss your stop. Consequently, I missed my stop. So I'm like, oh shit, like it's me and 3 other guys, like what's gonna happen? He moved for a second, I was able to slide out and run to the door at the next stop, and I jumped off, and he stops the doors from closing. He's like, you lucky we'll get off this.
Wow.
Let the doors close, and I called my dad, and I was just like, if I was ever harassed in my life when I was younger, this was by far the worst, one of the worst.
I mean, that was a threat of rape.
Yeah, that's a threat of rape.
Right. So that, you know, the train in New York and New Jersey. Yeah, no, this guy, I haven't been on the train. I've been on the train twice since COVID. So I just don't get on it right now. But because the last time this guy kept looking at me and looking at me and looking at me, and I was like, what is he up to? And when I got off the train, he airdropped me his dick picture. And I was just, I was mad because I had left my my airdrop open because I was at a comedy club and the photographer had sent me all these pictures. So I forgot to lock it back up. And then, yeah, he was just looking at me and looking at me and looking at me. And then when I got off the train, he got up and looked out the window like, yeah. And then,
it's me.
Yeah, and then I get to and I'm like, what is this? Like, and then, because I ain't even paying attention to it.
Right.
Because I have been getting pictures airdrop. And then I was like, oh, the weirdos. Like, it's just, I've been sexually assaulted, so I have my triggers, and I'm very paranoid. Unfortunately, so many women have. You know, it's not like we all have like a story, because that's sexual assault, whether it was a physical rape or not. But every woman that you talk to will tell you, oh yeah, this happened to me. It's so part of who we are in this country, and I mean in the world. I'm a gun carrier.
As you should be.
I study martial arts. Like, the rage that I have from my power being taken from me before, it's like, it's just made me somebody that in some ways can be a little hardened. And I don't want to be.
Do you think it's hardened, or do you think it's like defense? Because I don't know what kind of shit you about to pull.
I mean, it is, but we shouldn't have to walk around like that. No. Men don't walk. You know what? I saw a dude walking across the street yesterday in New York. It was hot, but he was walking across the street. I was with this guy who's the Christian, who's the director of something I'm working on, right? So we walking across, and I was like, it must be nice to just walk across the street with no shirt on. In the middle of the hot summer, without ever thinking that something's going to happen to you because you don't have your shirt on. Not that I want to walk with my shirt off, but it doesn't matter sometimes, you know. I can't, I'm always conscious about, you know, am I showing too much cleavage? Is this too short? Is this, people say stuff to me about, you know, you shouldn't be walking around looking like that. Men don't ever have to worry about that.
They never have to worry about that. Or it's the issue of...
Gay men do, but not straight men.
I mean, well, gay men have the privilege, when they, especially if they dress nice. But like women, we don't have the option without trying to hold the keys in our hand. You know, without having to carry mace. I don't know any man that carries. I don't know. And I have 4 brothers. None of them carry mace.
No.
Like, it's the weirdest thing. My man don't carry mace, but it's just, it's on the level of women, the minute we're assaulted or we're some type of provocative, it's, well, she was asking for it. I've seen Muslim women like be fully dressed and hear stories of them being completely raped.
Well, rape is not an act of sex, it's an act of power.
Right.
And
Torture.
when those people are sick like that, you could have on hijab and then be like, oh yeah, she was trying to turn me on, because they're off, right? So when people try to like qualify or justify these actions, speaking of women in that way, it's like, you know, those people who rape children, they rape boys, they rape young girls, they rape women. Like, it's an act of power and violence, and we have to separate it from the sexual stuff, because what it does is cripple everybody, because sex is a function of life, and everybody has sex.
Right.
So if you infected with that, then now you're gonna destroy somebody's esteem, because if they don't feel good about sex, and sex is healthy and it's normal, you should just not take it away from somebody.
Right.
So it's a very nuanced conversation, but this is so sexist. Yeah, we mean, we're pretty sexist in this country, so we can't have those conversations, because when we do, we're gonna always strike a nerve, because it's so embedded in the culture that it's just normal.
We're always running into the same wall, and then it's like always compared, like, well, it's not as bad as other Middle Eastern countries where girls are mutilated, and I'm like, that's an issue too, but this is an issue here.
Yeah.
And I know I was talking to my fiance and a group of his friends, and I was explaining how careful we have to be with our children and how proactive we have to be with our children when it comes to conversations about sex, because oftentimes we don't know what a cousin, because people often think like, oh, it could be auntie or uncle or dad, and I'm like, no, a lot of times that sexual molestation starts with people your age.
Yeah.
So you have to be mindful of the cousins you're allowing your kids to sleep over, because you don't know if cousin Gilbert is groomed already by another cousin.
Yeah.
And so when I was telling them, like, you have to be mindful if your kids know about pornography, because an adult showing a child pornography thinking like, yeah, you're going to do this, is actually child abuse. It's sexual abuse. So and you don't know if they're grooming them to make it think it's normal.
That's right. Yeah, no, that's where it comes from. And a lot of people don't want to have conversations about sex with their children because they don't want to invite them to the party, but I know, but it's just a misinformation. My mom was like that. And religion had a lot to do with it.
Religion tarnishes that concept sometimes.
All the time. And so it was very complex for us, because it caused a lot of issues with us, even the boys, not just the girls. Like, it's been a journey trying to deconstruct all of those, all that misinformation that was given to us when we were little.
Right, it is. It's a lot to unpack, especially with developing minds, because you're always wondering, like, all right, what have you been exposed to that I don't know of?
Yes.
And where can I meet you at to like protect you mentally, so that the biological factor in you of sex is not tarnished, is not disrupted or destroyed earlier than what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, it's, the internet and the exposure and television, and it's inevitable. So you have to arm your kids with the information early, because if not, the world will, and the world has so much misinformation that you have to fight that too. You know, like it's unfortunate.
It's like the world, their friends, their teachers, TikTok, Instagram. It's frustrating.
Yeah, I'm glad I got to play outside.
Yeah. I'm glad I ain't have no laptop or iPad. And now that I have a daughter, I'm trying to like, cause she's very into technology. I'm like, all right, my kid was born straight into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But she's such an outside girl. Like she wants to be outside.
I love outside. Like,
right?
I mean, I was just, where was I? I don't remember where I was yesterday. So, but I was somewhere. We used to play Foursquare, box ball, they call it some places, but it was just, I was always outside. If I wasn't in a tree, I was playing kickball, I was playing hopscotch. Like I was always, my mom used to go out and draw that. We didn't even know what hopscotch was, and my mom went out there and was like, played with us. But I was outside most of the day that I wasn't in school when I was doing homework. Like I would just do my homework so I could go outside. So I couldn't imagine spending my whole life in a house just in front of a monitor.
Is that how like you did with your kids, like go outside? Please go outside.
No, because I live in California and I was scared that they were going to get kidnapped. But they did play outside, but I would go outside and watch them. They would run around. But even from the time that I grew up and they grew up, things had changed so much that,
It's like how I feel. They were like, "Oh, we're gonna go outside with the baby." I'm like, "I'm going.
Yeah,
I'm going
you
with
gotta
you."
go watch them. It's just. I mean, things like that were happening back then. We just didn't have. We're so conscious of it now because we hear about it all the time. Like, and so it stays in your head. But I mean, people were getting kidnapped and murdered and all kinds of stuff happening. But now they want us to know all the time because they can sell us stuff. You know, it continues to drive the capitalistic views of this country. So we're always like, people are getting raped. Buy mace, get a gun, buy a ring alarm. People get kidnapped. Like it's just the news. Those are
hand in hand.
Media companies with corporations. They own. It's just so much. It's a lot.
And then movies of sex trafficking. I'm like, oh hell no.
Oh, that's
she
the
ain't
thing.
ever going outside.
Yeah, those. I watched. I think I watched 3 or 4 of them, and that was enough for me. It was like, I can't watch this because I'm going to be super paranoid.
Yeah, and I feel like that's when my anxiety kicked in. Like after I had a kid, I didn't think none of this shit before I had a kid.
Oh, of course.
I had a kid, and I was like, somebody is gonna break into her window.
Yeah,
He's like,
yeah.
I can hear everything. I was like, no, somebody gonna break into her window. You don't even hear when she cried. You're not gonna hear when somebody break into her window.
It's true. It's true. That's the paranoia that sets in because you hear about the stories, right? Because you don't hear about the kids who get found.
No.
You don't hear about the kids who don't get kidnapped. You hear about because that's business and people don't realize. And so actually this is a timely conversation for me because I've disconnected because I was getting very paranoid. And with my daughter, I was like, oh, they human trafficking black girls, she's Afro-Latina, she's beautiful, she's model-esque, I'm thinking to myself like, so I've been really like, I got paranoid and I had to disconnect from stuff. I just stopped watching Law and Order because that's addictive and people don't realize why it's addictive.
Especially SUV.
Yeah, SVU. You're downloading that into your subconscious mind, and your mind doesn't know the difference between reality and fantasy, so it starts creating anxiety in you. Like I had to unfollow a lot of people on social media who always want to show you people getting shot. Like I said, I know people getting shot. I know what's happening. So how do I sign up to help remedy the issue? I don't want to hear about it all the time. It's trauma porn. I stopped talking to people who always want to talk about that shit. Every time somebody's like, hey, I'm like, hey man, my agent is on the other line. I gotta go. Every time because it's too much. And I started feeling a sense of gloom and negativity. Like, what's this all for if we gonna die anyway? And I gotta watch it, I can't live my life like that. So I started reading more, just reading more ideologies from the Eastern way people think because we're just so programmed for negativity here and suffering. Like suffering is a part of our beliefs. And I was like, I gotta disconnect from that. Yesterday was hard. Last night, because I'm in a hotel. You know, we're just in a hotel, nothing's happening, and we're like, what are we gonna watch? What's this movie about? Oh, it's about immigrants getting killed. Nah, what is this about? Oh, it's about a rape. It's so hard to just watch something that's just fulfilling.
Yeah.
You know?
No, it is difficult. Oftentimes, like Calvin will start watching something at night and I'll be like, stop letting that sit in your spirit. Like, don't watch that before you go to bed. And he's like, I couldn't sleep because I kept thinking about the kidnapping. And I'm like, why are you watching that?
Yeah.
Why are you watching that? So why comedy and nothing else?
So, well, it's comedy and something else, but comedy has just been cathartic for me. I didn't move to LA to become a comedian. I moved to LA to become an actress and a writer, a film actor. I write movies, and I wrote a movie, and I sent it to Sundance, and it made it to like one of the final cuts of the lab, and I just was like, I'm gonna make it. And I moved, and I was acting for 7 years, and you know, writing and working. I did my own movies, and then I did a roast for someone that I knew for her birthday, a friend of mine, and another friend of mine named Chris Spencer, who's a comedian, was like, you're a natural stand-up. He was like, you should try it. So I tried it, and I never stopped. And it kind of took over because it took off faster. I did Last Comic Standing, and then all this other stuff happened. But I love stand-up comedy. I wanted to do it when I was little. It's really hard in a world where people tell you that you can only do one thing well, right? And that's not the case. Some people are good at more than one thing. I've always wanted to act, you know, I've always acted, and I love acting, but I love stand-up. Stand-up is something that's very freeing for me. It's my activism, you know.
Your form of it.
It's my form of activism, and I think that is why my comedy is so heavy-handed and always has been, because I had to arrive at the place that that's just who I am in stand-up, and acting is where I get to live out the fantasy and just be other people. So, but it's been very freeing for me. It freed me from a day job. It freed me from the struggle. You know, I was homeless. I was very broke. After my divorce, I was broke and broken, and I was in a place where I was economically oppressed in a relationship, and I was down and out. And comedy is what helped me get out the hole. And has created a very comfortable life for me that I never thought I would ever have. But you know, after this special, I'm going to focus on my acting. I have a TV show that I sold to HBO Max that's based on my comedy actually. And I'm going to focus a lot on the acting because I want to be at home for a little while because I'm tired of being on an airplane. Like I traveled throughout the pandemic. I wasn't at home.
Oh, okay. You were still busy.
Yeah, I was working. I had to. You know, I never got sick. I never got COVID, thank God. But I was on the planes with 10 other people because nobody wanted to fly with the mask and the hazmat suit on, trying to get to work. It was a lot.
Right. I feel like for me personally, you're really a breath of fresh air because I never saw a Latina comedian growing up. I saw Lucille Ball, who had a Cuban husband. I saw Carol Burnett, Mary Tyler Moore. And then when it came into comedians that were Hispanic, was George Lopez or Freddie Prince or Gabriel Iglesias. So when I found out that you were a Latina comedian that spoke about so much activism, I was so shocked and taken back that when I first started my podcast, I wrote a list of the people I wanted to interview, and you were second on my list, the first person I really interviewed.